Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 132nd Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss our current foreign trade controversy. The imposition of foreign trade barriers has been a subject of controversy since the founding of our country. Taxes or tariffs on imported goods to generate revenue or to protect domestic producers is as old as international trade itself. Today, our panel will discuss the positives and negatives that inevitably accompany these practices. Today's panel, beginning on my left, is Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left is Jerry Ritzman, co-founder of Ritzman Pharmacies. On his left is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist, and on his left is Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. Patty, one of the considerations that's raised in discussions about our trade agreements with the European Union is the possible elimination of all trade tariffs. Do you think that's possible?
I think it's possible. I don't think you could simply say that it's going to happen. I don't see it ever happening.
Do you think it's a good idea?
I think there's a lot of pros and cons. You know, I am obviously not an expert on tariffs or trade, but what I've seen on that is there are pros and cons. I mean, those that advocate for free trade are saying that it stimulates economic growth, and that you will cut, government spending, and there will be more dynamic business climate. Those that are opposed to it say that it increases job outsourcing and it cites poor working conditions. I think some of the things that we look at, for example, we just recently had the NAFTA bill rewritten
and renamed. And it was really more a tweaking of it to bring the NAFTA bill up to times with what's going on presently. Actually, I thought it was interesting. There were a number of things, from what I understand, that were put in place in that bill that were part of the TPP, which we refused to join, but then we put those into the new NAFTA bill, which is the U.S., Mexico, Canada agreement, I think is the name of it now. Yeah, excuse me, what is the TPP?
The Trans-Pacific Pact, was it? Yes. And that was, it was supposed to be a trade agreement in Asia.
Well, where China's going to eat our lunch now.
Yeah. So they put that in there, and I think that was a good deal that was put in, and that kind of put together a combination of free trade and tariffs and so forth, and set some rules up and some agreements between allies that we have, and I think possibly settled some disagreements that we had with allies. The biggest concern I have, though, is the fact that we're tending, though, at this particular time, to tend towards trade wars. And we have a president that says that trade wars are easy to win, and they're good. And actually, what's happening right now is that China is eating our lunch with that, and that when you start,
how is that eating our lunch?
Because when we increase these tariffs, what China comes back and says, okay, we'll increase these tariffs. It doesn't help if it eliminates the import of certain products into the country.
Into our country.
Because other countries don't want to pay the taxes. What that's going to happen is force Americans to actually pay more for items. And I think if there's anything we've learned is that Americans, for the most part, unfortunately, don't care where it's made as long as it's cheap. And that's what they're going to look for, is the cheaper item, and rather than the more expensive. One of the things that I know in the new NAFTA bill that they put in was an agreement that these countries would increase their wages and improve on labor conditions, so that you don't have that competition for the cheap labor and then therefore outsource and hurt American businesses. Unfortunately, what that is going to do is it's going to raise prices, and we do live in a global economy now. And I'm not sure that we're going to see a positive outcome of that. You know, one of the infamous, I guess, trade restrictions was the Smoot-Hawley Bill in 1930. And there are some that say that that helped to extend the Depression. You know, the Depression had already started, but there was talk of that bill actually going into place when it was put into place in 1930. And the Wall crash was in 29, and then this happened in 30. And there were 100-some economists had lobbied and written to Hoover and said, don't pass this bill. It's not going to help the country. It was passed, and there were some devastating consequences to it. So the idea that we can have these trade wars and win, I'm not sure is the best thing for the country. But I'm interested to hear what everyone else has to say on this.
Jerry, can I ask you a question?
You may.
Good. That's why I'm here.
Okay.
Right now, we're looking at an interesting, I guess it's a dichotomy, I'm not sure. The Federal Reserve is concerned about our economy getting overheated. And they're talking about raising interest rates in order to slow down the growth of the economy. At the same time, we've got people concerned that the tariffs are going to cause an increase in prices of imported goods and then translating into consumer goods. So we've got almost a natural built-in braking system for inflation on with the tariffs. Why can't we just leave that alone, not raise interest rates, not have the Fed raise interest? Maybe I should be asking Bryan, this being a financial guy. Is there a political component to this right now, where one side is critical of the tariffs only because they're Trump tariffs?
I would, excuse me, I wouldn't doubt it, but I don't know. So your answer to your question, I don't know.
Don't know.
But in answer to your first
I
question,
love surprising you with
yeah,
questions.
in response to your first question about eliminating tariffs totally, it may be a good thing, but gradually. But one side will say unbridled capitalism is the only way to truly run any economy. And I don't know if that's true or not. But boy, that any tariff that we put on imported goods ends up being paid for out of the American
consumer
public's pockets.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to a farm program the other morning, and boy, the farmers in the Midwest are really in a quandary. They built their capacity to satisfy the demand from China and the countries in the Far East, and they're not buying soybeans this year.
I just saw that China sent a big order for
they
soybeans.
did.
But they were targeting that specifically to get at Trump too, because they knew those were his voters.
And they don't know whether to sell or store, and they're
And the economy hates uncertainty.
That's right. And so the tariffs end up being paid for by us. And in Patty's comment about a global economy, we're in a global economy for competition for labor and everything like that. So it's not just you're competing with the guys throughout the state or the region for jobs, you're competing with individuals worldwide for jobs.
And that's a fairly recent thing. When I was in college, well, maybe that wasn't recent. I was a finance major, and when we were working on finance problems, we were told, just forget about foreign trade. It's not big enough to matter. Don't include it in one of your models.
Really?
Yeah. And that was fairly recently in the 60s. Foreign trade was not a big component of the American economy. Now it drives it to some extent. What do you think, Ron?
Couple of thoughts. Protectionism, tariffs or protectionist philosophy are kind of like sanctions, I think, and it hurts the little guy. The soybean thing is a good example of that. Here we put a tariff on here and somebody retaliates about that. Similar to sanctions, we put a sanction on a country, and the guys in charge don't get hurt, particularly. It's kind of similar. I remember, speaking of really recent, when I was at Cal Youth home from college and talking with my dad, at that point the big deal was automation. Now, he was a blue-collar worker and worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad, building railroad cars. And automation didn't really kill the railroad industry. It was the trucking industry that did more than that. But, I thought, Dad, we got to work. This is a worldwide thing. Protectionism is the opposite of globalization. And I think with you, Jerry, that I think globalization could be a good thing. And I think in some way try to get that playing field not exactly level, but try to find ways in which countries can do the thing the best and the cheapest and on their economic terms and share on that. Maybe you need some price adjustment in the forms of tariffs or agreements so that nobody gets hurt on that deal. But it's an idealistic point, but...
Didn't we find out, though, that globalization pretty much kills manufacturing in a country like the United States?
Well, is that good or bad, you see?
I don't know.
I don't know either, but if they could do this cheaper for us in Mexico, should we not go that route? Allow the Mexican economy to flourish, and we will get some benefit of that as well.
Well, what if only China had the capacity to build weapons, and we didn't?
Weapons are a whole different thing. War's still not the answer.
I know you'd rather that we not have them at all, and I agree. I do. But, Brian, I was going to ask you a question, but I'm an old man, and I just forgot what I was going to ask you. Anyway,
well, yeah. I'm kind of surprised yet relieved that I'm hearing some capitalistic tone coming out of our panelists here, other than Mr. Ritzman, who's run a business. The notion that we would raise wages across the board so that we have an equilibrium across borders, so that those low unpaid skilled workers in Mexico that are putting together wiring harnesses for General Motors cars is, I believe, a good thing. And we have Mr. Sanders out there beating the $15 an hour. I can tell you that there's probably not a Chinese worker making close to $15 a month. They make pennies a day. And Apple, we enjoy our Apple iPhones. We could not afford an iPhone if any of that production was brought here.
Yeah.
It's just not in the cards.
Well, there wouldn't be a cell phone industry.
There wouldn't be. There would not be a cell phone industry if it wasn't for those sort of low skill, low paying jobs that China has. Hundreds of thousands, of people that are willing to do that, because from the aspect of a pure capitalist, when money flows and capital flows go to those countries, those people are coming, in relative terms, they're coming from a place where they make a penny a day. And now they're making $3 a day. So they're happy to leave the farm and come into the city and work a job that has increased their standard of living. Unfortunately...
And they can import our soybeans then.
Well, exactly. And nobody talks about the tariffs that other countries have placed on our goods for years. The dairy farmers could not sell into Canada because of the tariffs that they were putting on milk and cheese and all the products.
300%.
Exactly, close to it. Nobody talks about the industries in Japan that were dumping steel on our country, basically gutting our steel industry, but we couldn't ship steel over there because of the tariffs that they were throwing on our steel. So the list goes on. Unfortunately, we have a president that likes to negotiate in public. Now, there wasn't one tariff that went into place that he threatened Canada with and Mexico with, because they came to the table, they negotiated a better deal. As far as he's concerned, some people say it was just and I would agree with Patty, it was some tweaking of NAFTA, And he's using tariffs with China. There have been very few tariffs that have gone in place because, the start date is always out here for tariffs. It's always like, we're going to include all these tariffs, but we're not going to start till some date in the future that gives the Chinese the opportunity to come to the table. There are certain industries that need protection, and I would agree that national interests, weapons, technology to get your missiles off the ground. I always tell people, the Chinese couldn't get a rocket off the ground until Laubaugh, under the Bill Clinton administration, sold them the technology, simple gyroscopes and all that kind of stuff, so that their rockets would actually get off the launching pad. And they've come a long way in their technology because we've allowed them to do that. So
We sold it to them, or they just stole it outright?
no, we
that's
sold
what I
it to
was
them.
thinking. They
We
stole
sold
it
it to them.
along.
We sold it to them. Laubaugh sold it to them. Yeah, there wasn't anything. It was one of those packs or all that kind of stuff. But you bring up another point: the intellectual property. The Chinese are great people when it comes to copying things, and they have I can't remember, it was Alibaba, which is their kind of Amazon. There are so many knockoffs on their site that the Chinese government is even starting to agree that we got to do something about this. The tariff is sort of the hammer that our current president is using. We're still one of the largest trading partners with China. When we sneeze, they get the flu. They don't want that. Now they're trying to manipulate and massage the message because they don't want to look weak. The Chinese, they don't want to look like they're just going to roll over for the United States. But they're going to come and they're going to have an agreement because a lot of businesses have invested in China. We have a lot of capital over there. Apple has some of their largest production facilities. A lot of manufacturing takes place. And when you start looking at it, I'm for a leveling of the playing field. It might not ever get level, but there needs to be some equilibrium. If we're going to let them come over here and buy companies wholesale, we should be able to go over there and buy companies, but we can't do that. We have to have a Chinese trading partner.
Yeah.
You can't go over there, Apple can't go over there and say, we want to do Apple China. They have to do Apple, Feng Shui, because you cannot have a wholly owned business in China without a Chinese partner. And we have to be able to protect our technology because they will steal it. They will steal it.
You mentioned the aluminum steel. Now that went into place. The unfortunate part of so many of those types of tariffs, though, is that while helping that industry, it hurt all the industries, the car industries, whatever, that purchase aluminum and steel. And they're finding that, okay, we're helping this industry, but we're really hurting these others. And Jerry talks about unintended consequences a lot. And
the politics behind it, though, I would dare say that 15, 20 years ago, there wouldn't have been a steel worker that would have voted for a Republican to save his soul. I know my grandfather was a tire builder with Firestone Tire and Rubber, and he was a blue dog Democrat. There was you said Republican in his house, he was showing you the door, because daggone it, he was a union tire builder, and they voted. Now all of a sudden, the steel worker is saying, wait a second, we've got a president that's willing to go to bat for us.
Yeah.
And the incremental cost to protect our industry and to have that, I believe steel, there are some industries that are national security. We have to have some of those products to create military weapons or to keep our economy running. So, it's a two-edged sword.
I find this topic of tariffs tremendously complicated and difficult to research. It's hard to know. My inclination is, well, what are we buying from Canada? What items have tariffs on it from Canada, and which ones do we put the tariffs on? And you can't really find that. It's very difficult. You'll get a lot of rhetoric about it.
yeah,
But the one thing that confuses me, Bryan, that you might be able to answer, I can't help but worry when I read that the Chinese hold a tremendous amount of our debt, and whenever we need to expand, they buy our bond. I mean, are they still doing it, and to what extent?
Sure,
And
because
do-
they can't. They
should
can't
I
trust-
worry? Should I worry about
No,
them
because they can't trust
demanding?
their own currency.
Right.
They have nothing that compares to a 10-year treasury, and that's what they buy in mass because they are savers in their country. And all these other countries are the same thing. They don't put, they don't invest in their own government securities because they have no real guarantee that when they buy the 10-year Chinese bond that they're going to get back their money in 10 years because there might be some sort of manipulation of their currency. The Chinese do it all the time. Our bond has been the store of value for a long, long time. And when anybody starts talking about, Trump's gonna go bankrupt or this or the other, there's one thing that Donald Trump isn't. He's not stupid. We might not agree with what he does and how he says it, but he understands that there's certain levers in the economy you don't want to mess around with. So the Chinese are not going to sell in mass our, the 10-year treasury because there's nothing else out there.
So what effect does that have on us? Is it something we should be worried about at all?
No, I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry. Countries buy our 10-year treasury. Large sovereign funds buy our 10-year treasury because they know that it's stable. And they know that when they decide, if some point in that 10 years they decide to sell it, that there's a market. It's the most liquid market out there. You buy a 10-year treasury today and tomorrow you want to sell it, you can sell it. And that's one thing that these other countries really don't have. They haven't been able to duplicate that. And with our ability and the history of that. So when I see those types of stories, it's like, oh, this is just fodder.
And that's why we want inflation, so we can pay those back with cheap money.
We can start talking inflation.
Well, that would take this
Probably just went
conversation.
up a quarter of a point, I can tell you that.
But still, historically, to Ron's point, our nominal interest rate is pretty near zero.
Yeah.
It's pretty
We
near
have
zero.
no concern about the national debt then?
No, no, I don't agree. I'm a hawk when it comes to that now, as I was before. We have to, and I'm surprised and I'm disappointed that they haven't been addressing that. But every time we see a ratchet up in interest rates, that costs the government more to pay that back.
Yeah.
So I'm
I'm just trying to, balance the two together.
Yeah, no.
Just kind of a corollary thing, this is a little off subject maybe, but we talk about tariffs and international trade driving down wages in the U.S. Because it is a global
For competition.
competition.
Yeah.
We're competing with other countries for jobs and wages and so forth. How much internal competition is there that keeps wages lower? I think there might be a segment of our population that is keeping or controlling wage increase. And I think that could be the retired
Are you talking
senior
about
population.
illegal immigrants?
No, I am not talking about illegal immigrants. I'm talking about retired seniors that take part-time jobs and they're willing to do it for 10, 12, whatever dollars an hour. And I'll work 10, 20 hours a week to pay for I heard guys say, I just do that so I can pay for my golf, or I can pay for my vacation,
Yeah, he
or
used
I
to-
have a little fun money.
Sure, exactly.
And
Fellow
and
told
how
me
mu-
he was never mind names or anything.
Yeah.
But he said it was amazing how much you can make on a part-time job. He had a
Yeah.
cabin up in New York and in a
Yeah,
boat.
yeah, right.
He was
And
retired.
so- and there,
10 hours a week.
and
Yeah.
there's that segment of the population that's
Yeah.
willing to do that, and they're taking up what percentage of work that's out there that if they weren't taking it,
Yeah.
might be taken by
Yeah.
somebody that's full-time or even at a greater rate. I don't know.
On the other
But I
hand,
think
with
the
cost
big,
of living, perhaps
they need
maybe
to.
seniors need a little.
But I,
They wanna be
but
active.
the
I
other,
had a brother
Active.
They want to stay
worked for a
active.
local company, was laid off,
right.
and the reason was they brought back a retired person for less money to
Sure.
do his job. It happened to be our uncle, which was a,
Good family.
yeah, it was
conversation.
yeah, it was interesting.
Thanks.
Kind of touchy
will
at
be fun.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. But
Well,
anyway,
we've
I'm
got
sorry to get off the track.
No, we got 2 minutes left. I wanted to just touch on this. Does the United States, being the most powerful economy in the world, have a humanitarian obligation to other countries around the world to, in setting trade parameters, consider an obligation to help uplift poorer countries in our trade policies?
Let me give you an example that's kind of related here that I just learned about. I was watching a program last night about studying a couple of active volcanoes in Africa. And there's a mineral that's formed in one of these volcanoes. And this mineral is controlled by competing militias, which are always at war, and they get kids as young as 12 and 13-year-old as child soldiers. And that mineral is used in touchscreens. So what's the possibility here? If we raise it, and that's where the money is in this area of Africa.
So we have to be considerate of the...
We have to be considerate of that kind of thing.
That domestic situation.
Domestic situations. I don't know the answer to that, but it's there behind the scenes, perhaps.
Interesting.
But is it fair of us to put a tariff on a product that's being produced by poor people in a poor country and put on a tariff to protect a competitor in the United States that's...
Maybe they need the tariff.
How would,
Make it more expensive for us.
we've only got 52 seconds for you to explain that to me.
Well, we get it cheaper, they can get more money of it if they have a protective tariff on it. And we buy that mineral from
I'll
them.
be thinking about that while I'm trying to
Yeah.
get to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
Which it probably won't happen. Okay, well, you didn't use up the 52 seconds, and I don't really have time for another question, except for right now we have what amounts to a full employment economy in the United States, and here we are trying to protect jobs that we can't even fill. That's a concern to me. But then again, all of these jobs might be filled by a voter at some point. Thank you very much.